Indonesia is a diverse, complex nation with vast natural resources and 240 million people spread across an archipelago of over 17,000 islands. What makes Indonesia especially unique is its young, dynamic and economically productive citizens. Nearly 60% of the population is still under the age of 30, and this demographic dividend is both a blessing and a risk. Young people with decent jobs produce economic vitality and growth. Decent salaries for them mean more consumption and industrial activity. By 2030, 90 million Indonesians will join the consumer class, more than any other emerging nation apart from China and India.
We would see or should see some measure of stabilization and even rebound. And I think there's many factors for that. But even now, I believe there's some bright spots in the economy. Certain kinds of exports are actually booming, unbeknownst to many. For example, jewelry and handicrafts turns out to be like a $5 billion per year export for Indonesia.
McKinsey says these young consumers will bring an extra $1 trillion in annual spending.
This is how the world is looking at growth opportunities in a very high-level, superficial way these days, which is very, very common.
But they carry with them the vigor of youth. Young consumers will demand more quality and diversity in the products they buy. They won't be satisfied with basic goods and services like previous generations would have been. They will want world-class products and they will want them fast. That means not just better goods and services, but better infrastructure. Better infrastructure means better economic growth and higher living standards for all Indonesians. Hard infrastructure like modern airports, seaports and highways, as well as soft infrastructure like better healthcare or, crucially, internet access.
We are now almost at the cusp of a major infrastructure development boost, led by government funding, led by government's new reform policies. And one of the things we are hoping, one of the reasons why we were happy to sponsor the Indonesia Economic Forum was because we think this is the time for international investors to come on board and help the government as they have done in other countries.
The internet is expanding at warp speed. It took 12 years for it to get 1 billion users. 4 years later, there were 3 billion. Emerging countries like Indonesia can leapfrog to the future if they commit to it. They do not have to go through the painful process of trial and error like the developed countries pioneered internet use. Smartphones are opening more avenues and faster routes to success. They're powering the digital economy in a way hardly any thought possible even just a few years ago. The next billion internet users is logging on an era of new universal connectivity that offers the promise of greater economic growth and business opportunity. This is where the future is. We are now entering the era of digital marketplace. The next billion internet users will begin their time online as consumers. They will buy and sell goods through mobile apps, and they will download content on a massive scale never seen before.
It is not an option for Indonesia to not invest in digital economy. Right? If it doesn't happen, a couple of thinking. One, Indonesia actually forego serving a new frontier entirely. Example, 70% of the poorest 15.5 million households in Indonesia actually have smartphones, whilst most of them don't have bank accounts. If Indonesia doesn't invest in leveraging digital to reach them, then the race to financial inclusion will not be accomplished.
A new economic ecosystem is forming where the next billion e-consumers will come from who they are, what they like, and just how they'll shape the digital marketplace is anyone's guess. But guess we must. These are most important questions put to businesses and investors globally. The answers? They depend on how governments, businesses, and consumers evolve together to face the challenges and opportunities of a digital future. Understanding the forces driving this revolution is crucial. Indonesia is on the road to developing its own digital ecosystem, one that will require cooperation between government, the private sector, investors, and entrepreneurs. For Indonesia to move from a commodities-based economy to a digital one, it must encourage innovation, it must adopt new mindsets, and it must attract global talent. It must also invest in education and training. But most of all, it must put faith in the youth. Today, the path of Indonesia's rise in the world runs straight through its young people.